So Ever Oak Farm in a whole nutshell, we're a 3-acre regenerative farm that implements biointensive market gardening, agroforestry, and poultry. I'll dive a little bit why we got into the poultry. We do a lot of composting on site. We now keep rabbits, make biochar, implement that into our composting practice. The chickens and the rabbits there are for fertility and a lot of our compost generating, manures, and also processing poultry of all the blood and feather, then feed it into the compost. Because going back, when it comes into organic fertilizer, the product of organic fertilizer is byproducts of CAFO systems, concentrated animal feeding operations. So even if that bag's OMRI listed and it's all organic and rated on nice, at the end of the day, the source of it
It's still not great.
is not that great. It's not coming from a sustainable source, but it's still an
Yeah.
organic input.
Ladies and gentlemen, grab your gloves and get your compost ready. Stepping into the ring is the perennial powerhouse, the sultan of soil, the beast of the beds, where permaculture reigns, food grows wild, community roots run deep, and yes, the garden punts hit hard. Freedom starts in the soil. This is the Guerrilla Gardening Show.
Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show. I'm Mike with Mike's in the Garden, here with Sam from Central Florida Abundance. And we got a very
What's going
special
on, y'all?
guest today, live from East Orlando. We're bringing you Mike Garcia from Ever Oak Farm. What's happening, Mike?
It's going good. It's fun being here with y'all. So love geeking out plants, especially with y'all. Y'all know your thing. So this will be fun to dive into it.
Yeah, you're kind of
Yeah, thanks
showing
for
us
coming
up
on.
too. We're the Guerrilla
Yeah.
Gardening Show, and you're actually out in the garden.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my office. I don't have any other place but my picnic table and an umbrella and being outside.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Mike, you're truly, really an all-star in our community. I try to send as many people to your farm as will possibly make the trip out to Orlando. It's just an incredible place, and I wish that my office looked a little less like this, a little more like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Mike, if someone's watching this and just hearing or learning about you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about how you started Ever Oak, what you were doing before, and I guess a little bit of
Yeah.
your origin story, as they say?
Yeah. So, yeah, let's start with my origin story, and which will then lead into where we're at now. So originally my background was in the culinary arts. Back in 2008, went to culinary school, was starting becoming a chef, was very passionate about cooking. But along that journey and working in and out of kitchens, I started questioning our whole entire food system. I was very curious, like how things were grown, especially being in the kitchen and handling food. Like, how did it get to that point? And seeing these delivery trucks coming in with produce and whatnot. So went through many rabbit holes and just started studying our entire food system and not just distribution, but also how it's grown, and started studying and looking at agriculture at every single angle, trying to understand the complexity of our entire food system, and also eventually coming and understanding that food has an environmental and a health impact. So after going through many rabbit holes or trailing off into many rabbit holes and just studying and learning our entire food system from how it's grown and how it's distributed, and led me into backyard gardening back in 2012. So I literally started in a little 4x8 garden bed in downtown Orlando and Lake Eola Heights, a little bit of shade canopy, but I made it work. I did a lot of container gardening and yeah, and raised bed gardening in my backyard. Still thriving, becoming a chef, just learning how to grow. Dove deep into permaculture. We moved out of that house, got into a couple other houses and started implementing a lot of the food forest stuff. Meanwhile, still doing annual gardening as well, integrated with a lot more perennial systems. Forward into uh halfway through my culinary career, I realized there's plenty of chefs out there and not enough farmers. I want to have more of a wholesome life anyways. Work with more of the natural rhythm other than the rhythm of the hospitality industry. It was just becoming draining. So there was multiple reasons and things leading towards me wanting to pursue growing full time. So back in 2015, I discovered market gardening, picked up JM's book, The Market Gardener, and then shortly later that year, Curtis Stone released his book, The Urban Farmer, and dove deep into market gardening. I felt like what JM put together in that book, and followed by Curtis Stone's book, it made it possible not to own land, like especially the Curtis Stone model of growing on leased land and growing these high profit, high turnover, high value crops and making a living on a small um, acreage of land. So yeah, back in 2000, so my last sous chef position was December of 2014. So January of 2015 is when I really started pursuing my journey. Like I'm just diving into it. Just a little more context. I've never worked with any other farmers. It was hard to find other growers that had the same mindset in this area that was very economically driven, but also still ecologically driven as well, and that had a very like a business model that could actually really show that hey, you can make a decent living. So not finding that, I had to create it myself, learn myself, picking up books, watching a tremendous amount of YouTube videos, just trial and error, just going through it. But yeah, 2015, was in November 2015, started our first market garden, implementing a lot of the JM stuff in Sorrento, did a year there. And then after not a year, sorry, one season, we wrapped up in June of 2016. Meanwhile, I'm also still cooking. I used to grow in the morning and then cook at night. I was a freelance cook, and also I did a lot of private chef stuff. So I've been self-employed since 2015.
Nice.
Yeah. So last kitchen job that I had pay was October 2019. So it took a few years to really get comfortable of making money off of my farm income before I could really jump. And at that time, my wife was working part-time. But going back into June of 2016, that landowner and I at the time couldn't come up with an agreement. So my housemates at the time decided to be like, hey, let's just rip down the food forest and go on full on urban farming. So literally did the urban farmer model to the T of all the crop selection within our context of our growing season. And yeah, put those principles, practices, and techniques in motion. And we did 3 seasons together, and we were doing well, and it was possible. We had a quarter acre of biointensive uh, salad production, essentially on a quarter acre. We were on our way of doing 100K per acre. Our last season, we grossed 68K. So at that time, though, where we were urban farming our main lot, because we also had 2 other lots, the landowners decided to sell the lot, and we were like, where to go from here? And we were like, all right, we all wanted to take different routes. Luckily, I was fortunate to come across the land where I'm at here now, which leads now into Ever Oak. So yeah, it's 3 seasons and the name of the previous farm was called New Growth Urban Farm, and we did it, and we did it well, and decide to dissolve it, and that's where I landed to Ever Oak Farm. So in that whole time, we were still catering to a lot of restaurants, and especially being in the hospitality industry, that was our focus, and our main market stream was just catering to restaurants. It was easy. They're willing to pay the high dollar price. A lot of times I was able to accommodate the volume. So when I started Ever Oak Farm, which where we're at now, I'm still on leased land. That's one thing I tell folks, and which we're going to dive deep into the agroforestry, because some people think I'm a little crazy planting these complicated, elaborate agroforestry systems on leased lands that you really don't see the full fruition of it till years down the line. But I have an amazing relationship with my landlord. So currently we're on a 3 acre lot, 10 minutes from downtown Orlando. Um, yeah, we established back in February 2019. And I was on that motion still on the intensive market gardening. Only annual production, set up almost 3/4 of an acre of biointensive market gardens. We also planted a small peach orchard at that time, but it was just a very simple monocropped peach orchard, and was doing it. Same thing, just catering to chefs, growing very niche crops from radicchios and certain chicories and celtis to every single color radish and turnip there you can grow. And then COVID happened, and that made me rethink everything we were my whole entire business model of just servicing the restaurant industry. And I really thought deep down why I originally got into this. And I got into it because I wanted to feed myself and family and the community. And I got to a point, it was like, you know what? I don't want to have all these exclusive niche type crops just selling to restaurants. So I slowly eased into our CSA. For those who don't know what CSA is, it's community supported agriculture, which we have folks buy shares into the farm in the beginning and throughout the season. And in return, they get weekly subscriptions of veggies. So yeah, and then also being here from 2019 to where we're at now, we experienced many different hurricanes, storms, climate events, and reflecting back, because I didn't wasn't even at that point even implementing a lot of like permaculture practices and techniques within. It was just classic organic market gardening, hitting everything with compost, organic fertilizer, high rotation, turning and burning. But there was some struggles at times, and I realized, man, it was easier urban farming than it was being in this 3 acre lot. And I looked back and I was like, well, I had a lot more established trees. There's more fence. So there was a beautiful microclimate in this windbreak. So that's when back in 2020, early 21, I discovered agroforestry. And I was like, oh, this is the answer. This is the solution I've been looking for. Just how a lot of these principles, especially a lot of the linear planting and being engulfed in market gardening, it's you're planting beds, straight lines because of the efficiency of management. So coming across agroforestry and especially syntropic agroforestry, I was like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for of all my years of growing, and just started slowly implementing and retrofitting it and slowly transitioning the farm to engulf some of these practices and techniques that Ernest Golsch has developed over his years of implementing and putting together agroforestry, or coining the term syntropic agroforestry. Take that back. Because there's many forms of agroforestry out there. Syntropy or syntropic agroforestry is a very special form of it. It's which we can engulf in that or get deeper into that a little later.
That'll probably
Yeah.
be a whole video series
Yeah.
on its own.
Yeah. But touch bases. But at that time, going through COVID, I realized like it wasn't fully sustainable having and focusing on pretty much one market. And that's when I really thought, well, I have to be diverse. Diversity builds resilience. And then also I wanted to diverse my crop, and also understanding that the perennial systems are the most sustainable systems, because annuals are very energy consumption, like very high energy consumption, because they're annuals. They have their certain work and the conditions, versus perennials. You plant it and then you're just slowly cultivating the space for it to eventually express however you want the system to express itself. And because there's less soil disturbance, less planting, and especially if you plan out your systems properly, it should be able to feed itself. Versus biointensive market gardening, since there's a lot of energy leaving the garden and you're always keeping the garden in placenta, you're always having to like uh refresh or re-energize that soil because of all those annual crops. Because especially if you're growing heads of lettuce, kales, collards, like these are greens that you're harvesting and then being consumed, versus most fruiting plants. It's like you get fruits, but you have the vegetation to chop and drop and feed it back into the soil.
Yeah.
So certain things like that. But yeah, man. So Ever Oak Farm in a whole nutshell, we're a 3 acre regenerative farm that implements biointensive market gardening, agroforestry, and poultry. I'll dive a little bit why we got into the poultry. We do a lot of composting on site. We now keep rabbits, make biochar, implement that into our composting practice. The chickens and the rabbits there are for fertility and a lot of our compost generating, manures, and also processing poultry of all the blood and feather, then feed it into the compost. Because going back, when it comes into organic fertilizer, the product of organic fertilizer is byproducts of CAFO systems, concentrated animal feeding operations. So even if that bag's OMRI listed and it's all organic and rated on nice, at the end of the day, the source of it
It's still not great.
is not that great. It's not coming from a sustainable source, but it's still an
Yeah.
organic input. And I am like, man, I have this beautiful farm then, this farm that I'm really trying to go beyond sustainability and being and treating it as a full ecosystem and trying to close the loop as much as possible. I want to try and lower my consumption of external fertilizers into the farm. So how can I make that up? It's like, oh, let me just bring poultry onto it. So we operate under the limited poultry license under FDAX. FDAX is Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, for those who don't know. And that falls under U.S. Federal Exemption PL 9432 that we're allowed to process meat birds on site up to 20,000 birds a year and sell directly to consumers in restaurants. So the beautiful thing of doing pastured birds, which actually I don't really use the word pasture, I use for the word force raised because now we have these nice elaborate these agroforestry systems, and also chickens technically are from were bred. Its original lineage is jungle fowl,
Yeah,
and
South America, rainforest bird.
Southern Asia, rainforest,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, forest dwelling bird, which was then bred over centuries to be it. But if you go back to the roots, they're originally understory dwelling creatures that are foraging for bugs and grubs, fallen fruits. They're even scavenger and opportunists. So I need to cultivate that condition and understanding the origin of chickens and creating that. And to create these systems to add a sense of complexity to more into their diet. And also they're dropping manure and feeding the lines in the alleyways as well. Um, and then when I harvest them, I'm harvesting and keeping all the blood, the feather, the guts, and that's getting compost, which we do do hot composting here on the farm. We have a tractor that I flip. I do still rely on arborist wood chips as a carbon source, but my nitrogen source is the byproduct of the poultry processing, any veggie scraps, vegetation, nursery things that go out, and rabbit manure. But a lot of times with the rabbit manure and going to the brooder, which a brooder, for those who don't know, is an area where you keep baby chicks until they reach a certain maturity where they can go out into your pasture or move up to the next your roosting box or out in the field or whatever your context may be. Um, I wanted to take advantage of biochar because I've just always heard the benefit of it, but you want to make sure it's fully activated and inoculated with some sort of microbes and or nitrogen rich material. So the easiest thing I've always been told is like you throw your biochar in your composting process. So for the chicken brooder, we use still a lot of pine shavings, but I also mix a lot of biochar, so it's absorbing all the chicks' manures in there. And then we also, for the rabbits, I collect pans of their manure and their urine, and I'm constantly making layers of biochar and their waste product, which then eventually will go into the compost, get turned in. So then after that whole process, 4 or 5 months from now, that eventually goes into the garden. So it's
Yeah.
nice
But
having
it
all this
smells a
waste.
lot better too, huh? Does it?
Yeah,
Does
and
the
that's
odor go away?
for the most part it does. And if there is odor, that's mean you just have to increase your carbon into it.
Hmm.
If you're smelling odor in any compost or any situation, there's just
But what
huge
about your
catch.
manure? Like, the smell of a chicken coop. Does the
It
biochar just,
it helps a lot. It
yeah.
helps tremendously, and especially the feed that we give them also has an OGS, organic gut solution, which is like some type of
Oh, okay.
form of biochar, even though the company is like, it's not technically biochar, it's another process that it goes through. By the end of the
But it's
day,
a charcoal.
it's a charcoal at the end of the day. So it's ground up in their feed. So they also absorb that, which then passes through their whole digestive system and comes down into that waste. So yeah, it helps a lot with the smell. So yeah, that's how we build soil. And also the summer months, our annual growing season goes from October to actually we start plants, get things in the ground around the equinox, and then we end it and wrap it up about June. So for annual production, we're hitting heavy from essentially from October to about June. Perennials are pretty much managed year round, except winter, when most of the systems are going dormant. which is perfect because that's at the peak of market gardening and annual production. So it's nice to be able to have some of the workload spread out through the year and the seasons. Um, but yeah, going back to the agroforestry and why I really adopted, and I mentioned those barriers. So urban farming, I had all the trees and fences. It's like I need tree lines, but also going through hurricanes, numerous of hurricanes in the past, and in September when you're planting and you're trying to have a early fall harvest in October, um, it's just so
You get an
hard.
October
Yeah,
hurricane.
you get the October, but then also the September summer storms as well. That is just what 1 second is super blazing hot, pushing like 98 degrees. Then the sky opens up, an inch of rain comes down in 30 minutes, mini tropical storm, and then it clears up like nothing happens. Well, when you
Your
plant
tomatoes
trans
don't know what to do.
exactly, and wind coming from every direction. So it's like I needed to create that little climate and buffer for them. But also I didn't want to rely always on veggies. So that's why incorporating like papayas and bananas, because small tropical storm comes through, a lot of papayas and or a small hurricane comes through, a lot of papayas can handle it for the
Oh
most
yeah,
part.
I
And
think
same thing
it's
with the bananas.
interesting
Yeah.
that you had mentioned that you started learning about food forestry before you even got into market gardening, but it took some time for those two ideas to really integrate. I mean, I feel like a lot of people do that. They separate their food forest from their annual garden,
Yep.
but what you're telling us is the real solution is to put those two
It,
things together. And you mentioned the linear systems.
yeah,
Um, that's got to make, I mean, that's for the management to make taking care of it simpler.
correct. Yep. Uh yeah, because at the end of the day, we're here to feed ourselves. Like our mission too with Ever Oak Farm, like our actual mission is and this is our statement, is to nourish the land and community through food. And just not only nourishing ourselves but really making sure we're attracting. And that's because that's another thing. I've been 3 years of no organic insecticide sprays on this farm, which took a
Wow.
while. So because understanding that pest and disease is a stress response, so something's off balance that is signaling all these pests or this disease to be able to express itself. And there's some actual proven literature on some of these topics, and I have personal experience on some of these things. For example, aphids are attracted to plants with excess nitrogen, and that excess nitrogen can come from even compost that hasn't been fully broken down that's still high in nitrogen. But when those sugars in the plants increase and they go through that rapid growth, that's where a huge infestation of aphids come through. Um, or water stress. Another thing is I deal with the yellow zucchini mosaic virus here on this farm.
Mm.
And when I plant my fall zucchinis, I get this very deformed looking fruit, very unproductive plant, and it automatically gets disease and dies out. But during the spring, I don't get that. And the thing is, during the spring, it's much cooler and it's drier versus the fall. It's super humid and it's still super hot. So those stress conditions of the climate alters of if that virus is if it's in a stressful condition for those virus or that disease to be able to express itself. Because now, like it's like us, if we go super on if we're very on high stress consistently, we can get sick and not feel well and out for a couple of days. It's like our immune system goes down from stress. I think most diseases are caused because of high stress. Um, Plants are no different. They also have their immune system, and their soil is their gut biome. So the more you put love into their soil, and the more diverse is happening in their soil, the more that the plant has this resilience towards it, and not having too much of something or too little of something. So that's always the goal, is to keep a balanced soil. And then also understanding certain pest patterns as well. Like flea beetles always presents themselves around March. For some reason, from March to April, they're more active and they like to go after a lot of things in the Brassica rapa family, which are a lot of your Asian greens, your pak choys, Mizuna, some of the turnips as well, mustards.
So
And
you're really getting to know, your pests, and that's your pest management, is to understand their cycles and then, just adapt around that instead of just
correct.
trying to, wipe everything out.
Correct, because if you spray, it doesn't pick which beneficial insects, it doesn't pick which insects is going to go after the beneficials and so on, not beneficial. The idea is to cultivate the environment that they all symbiotically work with each other, and there's these checks and balances. Another thing too, like the little cabbage looper, the moth that lays those eggs and that they originally go like morph into, are more active in the evenings when they're consistently in the 70s. So waiting to plant a lot of those brassicas that are prone to that caterpillar, and waiting for more consistent nights in the 60s when they're least active. So that's like part of my whole pest management and understanding the cycles. Because if not, they're just like, hey, I need food. I'm here. I'm still active in this environment. I'm going to feed off of that. Or sometimes too, it's just something's off balance, and that's just the disease and the pest also removing that plant. So something in succession can take in that place in time. Because sometimes like nature is picking like, hey, this shouldn't be here right now. There's something that should be much stronger that's taking this place in time. So like one big example that you'll hear guys in the tropics talk about, and Ernst, if you read some of his stories, they talk about like leaf cutter ants. And like though if you go into a forest area and you see a lot of leaf cutter ants, they're pruning the trees up in the over on the top story. They're trying to bring in more sunlight. So a solution of removing them is not so much terminating them. Prune the system, get more sunlight. And then they notice when they prune those systems, the ants are gone. They don't need to,
Wow.
that's their ecological. So that's another thing, is understanding what each living thing's ecological function is and why they have these certain behaviors and what are they contributing to this beautiful superorganism that we live in of Earth, and understanding that. So my farming really has evolved into fully ecology. Like I embrace agroecology and
That's
understanding
amazing.
the ecological benefit and function of every single living thing. Even though the weeds that we find a nuisance and the pests that we find a nuisance, they have a function, and it's understanding why. So other than getting frustrated, and because I tell my interns and my apprentices this, observation is the best thing, which is one of the principles in permaculture. You're always observing and see
Observing and adapting.
exactly. So that's always my thing, is to be able to, you observe, you adjust, and then you just move on. So that's what I say. Observe, reflect, adjust, and I just go off that pattern. So consistently. So, and then yeah, over the years things get a little easier because the more complex your ecosystem's becoming, the more balance it's there. So, and then yeah, like I said, get also going into the rhythm of what works in certain time of years. So it works out great because during the fall and winter, now from this point on, I just go green herbs, brassica heavy. And then the spring, I go nightshade, cucurbits, super heavy after that. So I indulge in greens and herbs and lettuce and whatever during the fall, winter months, slowly transitioning spring. And then I enjoy my tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants into the late spring, early summer. Meanwhile, beans get planted on the shoulder. I always do beans on the shoulder seasons as well and whatnot. But that's just years of experience and what works in my context, because my goal is always to work with the rhythm in nature, not against it. And yeah, and just always listening to what she has to say. Even with this big freeze that we went through earlier this year, yeah, it sucked. I lost all the mangoes I planted during the summer. All my papayas are doing, but it gave me and showed me the flaws within my design system of what wasn't strong or what I didn't put in, or maybe got too comfortable and not fully understanding our little microclimate, or this little climate of Central Florida, that we are prone to Arctic blasts. It doesn't matter if we're listed 10A, which is misleading to new gardeners because I don't know, you can plant a breadfruit technically in zone 10, right? I think. And some other
I
tropical
think,
plants.
yeah,
Yeah, which could be misleading
it's
to
not,
somebody new. Yeah.
yeah,
Which
you
even
know,
though technically the
it's
average, yeah,
advisory,
yeah,
but Facebook and mass media, they blow that out of proportion. They're like, oh, you're on the cusp of 10A now. Oh, go
yeah,
wild.
yeah.
But in reality, I don't think anybody would recommend, planting uber tropical stuff here. Uh, you
But people
know,
first getting into it might be misleading. It's like, oh, technically this plant's listed for 10A. So I always tell folks it's like be safe and stay on the bees. But going back to it, it just showed me like I need to be planting more climate appropriate stuff and just seeing where I'm lacking in support. So now it's nice to kind of do a pretty good reset, replant some of the systems into more climate appropriate or zone appropriate plants. At the end of the day, context dictates that. Uh, Not to say like, yeah, keep planting mangoes. We went freaking 15, 16 years without a freeze. That's a lot of mangoes you got over those 15, 16 years. Now you're going to go about a year or two without it, but then you're still not going to get another freeze for 10, 15 years. But in the context of a producer, it's like, man, you don't want to invest all that time and you have acres planted out of these, and then you have 2 years of not having. But then again, having a diverse enterprise of growing veggies, other fruits, and poultry, and now moving towards more nursery production, it's good to have these multiple little enterprises. I don't have all my eggs in one basket. So
As your agroforestry system matures, is your plan to eventually phase out the annuals because you'll lose, or are you just going to keep pruning to keep it that center area? That's your strategy, right? You have rows of perennial biomass and then empty space in between that you're keeping constantly in, fresh rotation of annuals.
correct. Yeah, and that's just in the context that
Here we go. This is great.
yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Oh, dude, if you don't mind, I could show you more recent videos. Oh, actually not too recent. This is probably back in September and November that I have some really great videos of what the farm looked like then pre-freeze, because it was amazing, dude. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually planting out a forest, and I get amazed easily.
No, I
But
mean,
yeah,
creating a forest from a field, I think that
yeah,
is pretty amazing. I mean, we could look at his videos. We could hop into the next one if we want to keep going.
yeah. Let me see here. Yeah, actually,
Where
if
do
you
you
don't
have
mind me.
these videos, Mike? Are they on Instagram?
They are on my desktop.
Okay, and that's what you're
So
on right now?
yeah, yep, I'm on my desktop right now.
All right, so
Um,
let's do this because we
yeah,
got less than 5 minutes on this video here. We'll stop this one. We'll hop on
yep,
to the other one,
cool.
the
And
other
we'll take
link
it
I
from there.
sent you, and then we'll do the all participants can share. And yeah,
Cool,
let's get into some videos. Excited.
perfect. Yeah, let's
Awesome.
do it. All
All
right.
right.